Thus, we can finally reach the pinnacle of the comparative exercise conducted so far. The compatibility between Orthodox Christianity and anarcho-capitalism, particularly in its Paleolibertarian and Hoppean variant, represents a fertile field for debate on the intersections between Christian safe, libertarian politics, and contemporary economic theories. This study seeks to explore how the defense of individual freedom and anti-statist conservatism, central features of Paleolibertarian and Hoppean anarcho-capitalism, can paradoxically reinforce and empower the principles of Orthodox Christianity. To do so, a detailed analysis of the interaction between these two spheres of thought will be presented, with special attention given to the origin and concept of Paleolibertarianism. Paleolibertarianism is a branch of libertarianism that emerged as a reaction to socio-cultural liberalism, incorporating a conservative perspective on social and cultural values. Its etymology comes from paleo, from the Greek, meaning ancient or primitive, and libertarianism, which refers to the political philosophy advocating the maximization of individual freedom, especially at the expense of state intervention. Thus, Paleolibertarianism is characterized by the preservation of traditional values, such as family, religious, and community morality, while advocating the elimination of the state and organizing society through natural law, free markets, voluntary contracts, and private property. The movement has its intellectual origins in the writings of figures such as the already heavily cited Murray Rothbard and Lew Rockwell, who in the 1980s combined Austrian economics with cultural conservatism, rejecting both the interventionist state and the collectivist tendencies of social liberalism. At the core of both Orthodox Christianity and Paleolibertarian anarcho-capitalism, we find a common view on the state and power. Orthodox Christianity, like Paleolibertarian anarcho-capitalism, advocates a stance of distrust toward state power. Historically, Orthodox Christianity has opposed the idea of absolute secular power, with the Church representing a moral authority superior to that of the state. The relationship between Church and state in the Orthodox tradition has never been one of total subordination, but rather a critical position in relation to secular power, which creates a common foundation of values with the anti-statist philosophy of Paleolibertarian anarcho-capitalism. The rejection of the state as an absolute power is a principle that dates back to the Holy Scriptures, where Christianity emphasizes that the kingdom of God is not of this world in John 6:36 p.m. For Orthodox Christians, the relationship with secular power should be one of moral resistance, with the faithful being called to live according to God's will, even when this contrasts with human laws. This principle resonates with anarcho-capitalism, especially in the Paleolibertarian and Hoppean variants. Hans-Hermann Hoppe, for example, argues that the state is essentially a coercive institution that imposes its will on free individuals, violating their property rights and freedom. For Hoppe, as for the Orthodox, legitimate authority must be based on morality and individual freedom, not on force or the monopoly of violence. In this sense, the critique of the state made by anarcho-capitalism aligns with the Orthodox Christian critique of the idolatry of secular power. The issue of private property is central, both in Orthodox theology and in anarcho-capitalism. Orthodox Christianity, while acknowledging that everything belongs to God, discerns the importance of private property as a means of living justly and responsibly. Property is seen as a divine gift that must be managed with respect and justice, and Christians have the duty to share with the needy, but without the coercive imposition of redistribution. A principle that aligns with anarcho-capitalism is critique of the redistributive state. In Hoppean thought, private property is the foundation of social order. For Hoppe, the defense of private property is the defense of freedom, as each individual has the inalienable right to control the fruits of their labor and protect their goods. This understanding of property as a fundamental right is consistent with Orthodox Christian morality, which, while affirming that property is given by God, recognizes that the individual has the right to manage it as they see fit, always respecting the principles of love and justice. Paleolibertarianism, especially in the Hoppean variant, has a conservative moral component that uniquely aligns with Orthodox Christian teachings. Paleolibertarians advocate for traditional morality, including the preservation of family, religion, and community values. The critique of collectivism and state intervention proposed by Paleolibertarians connects with the Christian vision of a society where individual freedom and mutual respect prevail, without the imposition of a central power that corrupts the relationship between individuals. The rejection of collectivism, central to both Orthodox Christianity and Paleolibertarian anarcho-capitalism, is closely tied to the belief that each person must be responsible for their own actions and, in the religious sense, for their own salvation. In Orthodox Christianity, salvation is personal and cannot be imposed by any state. Similarly, in anarcho-capitalism, individual freedom and property rights are seen as fundamental rights, and society should consist of autonomous individuals, not the imposition of collective norms. In Orthodox Christianity, the role of government is seen as subordinate to the authority of God. The government must guarantee peace and justice, but always within the limits set by Christian morality. The Orthodox view of government rejects the idea of an omnipotent state and proposes a peaceful coexistence where secular authority is limited. On the other hand, Paleolibertarian and Hoppean anarcho-capitalism completely rejects the state as a coercive structure and proposes a social order based on voluntary contracts. For Hoppe, any form of government, whether democratic or authoritarian, is illegitimate, as it always imposes force on individuals. Instead, social relations should be based on voluntary exchanges, respecting private property and freedom. This critique of the state and coercion resonates deeply with Orthodox Christianity, which views state coercion as a corruption of divine order. Christian freedom is not understood as licentiousness, but as the ability to live according to Christ's moral principles, and this includes the freedom not to be subjected to a state that violates property rights and moral duties. The analysis of the compatibility between Orthodox Christianity and Paleolibertarian and Hoppean anarcho-capitalism reveals that, despite differences in approaches to economic and social issues, there is a common foundation of principles found in the defense of individual freedom, private property, and traditional morality. The anti-statist and anti-collectivist conservatism of Paleolibertarianism not only aligns with Christian teachings on freedom and personal responsibility but also reinforces the Orthodox critique of absolute secular power. Thus, anarcho-capitalism, especially in its Hoppean variant, can be seen as a political philosophy that not only respects, but also strengthens Orthodox faith by defending a society where freedom, property, and Christian morality can flourish without the intervention of a coercive state. The physical removal, as advocated by Hoppe, although a controversial concept, is grounded in the logic of preserving order and morality within a community. The idea is not arbitrary violence, but legitimate self-defense against those who pose a threat to property or social order, with removal understood as a physical distancing of those who, by violating others' rights, create an environment of chaos. This extreme measure aims to protect citizens who respect property and morality from wrongdoers, allowing for peaceful and harmonious coexistence within the bounds of what is considered acceptable by the community. This concept of preserving the natural and moral order directly connects with the vision and practice of the Orthodoxy. While the Orthodox Church does not explicitly advocate for the physical removal of wrongdoers in the exact same sense as Hoppe, it employs the concept of excommunication to exclude those whose actions and behaviors contradict Christian morality. Excommunication is a spiritual measure, intended to preserve the purity of the Christian community and moral order. In a similar vein, Hoppean's philosophy proposes that a community based on principles of freedom and property must be protected from the disorder caused by individuals who violate these principles. Both systems seek to ensure that morality and social order are maintained, distancing those who persist in destructive or disrespectful behaviors toward society. Finally, in Hoppe's writings, especially in his critique of democracy, he argues that the democratic system is essentially a form of disguised tyranny, as it subjects individuals to the will of the majority, often at the expense of property and individual freedom. This critique aligns with the Christian view, which has historically been skeptical of absolute, secular and elitist power or power based on the force of the masses, seeing them as corruptions of divine order. This thinking is also reflected in the trial and death of Jesus, who, when condemned by a corrupt political system grounded in illegitimate authority and the tyranny of the sinful majority, symbolically rebukes the fallibility of human power structures. Both in Orthodox theology and in Hoppean thought, there is a rejection of authority that imposes itself coercively, with an emphasis on preserving individual freedom and morality against state or collective impositions. This point of inaffection between Orthodox Christianity and Hoppean Paleolibertarianism, along with other ANCAP and Austrian libertarian thinkers, makes it clear that both share a vision in which the preservation of moral order and the integrity of the community is essential for ensuring a harmonious and virtuous coexistence. While the Orthodox Church uses spiritual tools to maintain this order, such as excommunication, Austrian and Paleolibertarian Hoppeanism makes use of more direct measures such as the physical removal of wrongdoers and an uncompromising defense of political means and aggressors, to ensure that the community respects each individual's rights and property. In this way, both systems advocate for the prioritization of individual freedom, private property, and traditional morality as the foundations for building a just and balanced society.